Hello, coaches! Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better Spotlight. Today, we're chatting about the differences between working with students and working with adults. We have 4 of our superstar coaches from the podcast, Will, Tim, Ben, and Maggie, so you'll get a wide range of perspectives and experiences. This conversation was prompted by a question in our Coach Better Facebook group. How is working with adults different than working with students? In the Spotlight episode, we're highlighting the key differences between working with adults and working with students in our experience, but catch the full podcast to hear us reflect on the challenges many of us face in transitioning from a teaching to a coaching role, our thoughts on the important elements to consider when working with adults, and strategies and tips we have learned on our coaching journeys. If you have questions about coaching, please join our Facebook group or message us on any of our social media platforms at Eduro Learning. If you enjoyed today's episode, you are going to love our new resource for instructional coaches that you can find at coachbetter.tv/start. As requested by our listeners and viewers, we are compiling all of our coaching resources in one place just for you, and we are just getting started, so check back often for more updated content. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better. Today, we are going to talk about a question that we have received in our Coach Better Facebook group, and I'm really excited to hear the different perspectives from everyone on the team today. Our question is, how is working with adults different than working with students, and what should coaches know and do? Before we dig into that question, I'm just going to, as usual, ask everybody to introduce themselves so you can see who's on our call today, and I will start with Tim because he's right on my screen right now.
Hi, I'm Tim Bray. I'm the Director of Educational Technology at Cheongna Dalton School in Incheon, South Korea.
Awesome, thank you. And Ben is next on my screen.
Hello, Ben Sheridan. I'm a Learning Innovation Coach at NIST International School in Bangkok, Thailand.
Fantastic, thank you. And Maggie.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and I'm an independent consultant, and I'm based near Cambridge in the UK.
Fabulous. Thank you, Maggie. And last but not least is Will. And Will is a new face on this call. And I'm very excited to have Will join us because we're going to try to bring in more of the coaches that we've talked to as part of the Coach Better podcast so you can get lots of perspectives from coaches all around the world. So Will, please introduce yourself and then we'll get started.
Hi, I'm Will Kirkwood. I work at Zurich International School. I'm a EdTech coach, whatever the name you want to call it. That's what I am.
Thank you, Will. Fabulous. So does anybody have a first response, first instinct where they have something to say about how is working with adults different than working with students and what should coaches know and do?
I can pipe up first.
Go.
It was a sort of one of those big learning experiences when I first sort of moved out of the classroom and into working with teachers in the early sort of EdTech days. And the first sort of learning I had was that wondering about how sort of adults aren't used to taking directions like kids are. Mm-hmm. So the skills you sort of develop as a teacher don't always translate moving across to adults. And it was just that sort of big learning shift. And it obviously takes different people, different amounts of time to sort of adjust their techniques and strategies. And sort of in the sort of coaching role, you're actually constantly moving back and forward between that coaching adult lens, but also working with student lens. And sort of how do you play that out? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Go ahead, Tim.
I was going to say another thing. That's an excellent segue there, and I think definitely right. I think another thing that's really important that I was luckily working with a couple other people when I started off, and we had all sort of hit the same kind of oh yeah, this is a big important thing. And one of it is I think it's always good to tell the students why you're doing something, but they'll give you a little more time to develop the why or maybe try to elicit it from them. Whereas generally adults want to hear it straight up. Why do I need to know this? What's important about this? And once they have that, then they're totally fine. But they definitely want to have that information first. I think a lot of it's like to deal with time management. There a lot of times I think in the back of their mind, I think, is this something useful to me? And if they see that it is, then it's like, oh, okay, then I want to learn more about it. Oh, you know what? This isn't useful to me. I'm not interested. I don't have time for that right now.
Yeah, I think also is with kids, usually you have credibility, sometimes automatically, but with adults, sometimes you don't have that credibility. Sometimes, especially from like if they're a regular full-time classroom teacher, you may be seen as someone who's not in the classroom, so you might not have as much credibility in their mind. So it's always a delicate balance between, building your credibility and not sound like you're bragging or, kind of full of yourself. So I think that's one of the main differences I notice is like how to sort of thread the needle there of like building your own credibility, bringing your own experiences to the table without, sounding like you're showing off, I guess.
Okay, I would say that for me, a lot of the work that I've done with students involves students wanting to know how to do something. And I would say a lot of the work that I've done with teachers involves teachers wanting to plan how to do something and then maybe reflect on what they've done so that they can improve what they've done moving forward. I find teachers generally more reflective than students. I think sometimes students get a bit tired of us asking them to reflect all the time. Whereas I don't know that teachers do. I think teachers often really welcome an opportunity to talk about something that they've done with the view of making it better. But for me, I would say that probably the biggest difference is what's going on under the surface. I find a lot of teachers come into coaching conversations, and although they come in ostentatiously to talk about perhaps something that's happened, the conversations veer off and they go more into things like personal identity, what they see their role is, how they connect with other people, how much influence they have on situations. And I can truly say I've never really had those conversations with students. The focus of the conversation with students is more about their work, not what's going on under the surface of that work.
Yeah, I think you actually raised a really, really good point, Maggie, because, and I've never thought about it. I've thought a lot about it in the teacher aspect, though. Like teachers, so much of their identity is tied to their work. Whereas a student, it's not so much. Like you're trying to actually make students understand that their work is a reflection of them, or their effort, or, as a way to sort of motivate them often. But I find that sometimes teachers they identify so much with their work being a reflection of them that sometimes even, entering into a conversation, you have to really be careful, because if you're asking them to change something or change an aspect or try and be better, you're at something, you're actually asking them to be better as an individual or change something about themselves, because it may not be, what you think is the best, but they might take it as a personal attack on their identity or something, So yeah, that's a very good point, Maggie.
And I think that connects with something that I wanted to say. Sorry, Will, I'll jump in then give it to you. I think something that is really different working with adults and working with students, and might sound similar at first, but will get different as I keep talking, is the wide range of individual experiences that they come to you with. Of course, students all have their own individual range of experience, but when you're working with adults, not only can the age range be like massive, but the amount of time in the field, the amount of expertise they have in various subject areas, the amount of just general experiences they've had in this kind of environment, like it's so much more massive, the spread, I think, than you would have generally speaking in a classroom. And so valuing that past experience and recognizing that past experience and making them feel valued and understood in that past experience is something really important and gets at that idea of teacher identity, and how I feel like I belong in this learning experience depends on how much you value my previous learning and professional experience. I hope you enjoyed that conversation, and there is so much more on the audio version. Don't miss subscribing to our podcast on any of your podcast subscribers under Coach Better.